Hollywood, California, in an apartment off Sunset Strip, a marijuana pot party is about to begin. A lid of marijuana has been purchased down on the Strip. Illegal, but easily available. Here it is. It weighs approximately 1 ounce. That's just 1 ounce of the 3 to 5 tons of marijuana smuggled into California from Mexico every week. The first step is to clean the marijuana by shaking to remove the stems and seeds. Next, the leaves are placed between 2 sheets of roll-your-own cigarette paper, usually held over a container to catch any of the marijuana that might spill. Then it's rolled into a joint, the drug user's name for a marijuana cigarette. It's now ready for use. The girl is toking, smoking marijuana in short, deep breaths and holding it in the lungs as long as possible. The smoker will soon slip from the world of reality into his high, the euphoria that drug abuse brings. In San Francisco, a young man prepares to shoot his LSD. If he took it orally like most do, he'd have to wait 45 minutes for the desired effect. LSD is on the increase in this country, even though it has been known to cause chromosome damage. One popular brand is called White Flats, which features arsenic to heighten the hallucinogenic experience. The youngsters don't realize that arsenic builds up in the system and may prove fatal. Here in the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury district, a youth proudly displays his dope, apparently benzodrine or dexedrine tablets, commonly referred to as uppers, as both are forms of the stimulant amphetamine. Albuquerque, New Mexico. This young man is loaded on downers, which are barbiturates or sleeping pills, known to the in crowd as Red Devils, Blue Heavens, or Yellow Jackets. The trade names are Seconal or Nimbutal. They're extremely addictive and dangerous. Many deaths have resulted as it is so easy to overdose with downers. Denver, Colorado. A young man has just purchased speed, the street name for methadone. On the table is a dime bag, $10 worth. Preparation starts by mixing with plain tap water, using his girlfriend's bobby pin to stir. Such highly unsanitary practices are a major cause of infectious hepatitis epidemics spreading among the middle and upper middle class. Because underworld forces have come into the picture, the quality of the drug is uncertain. The user never knows what he's going to get. So first, he must taste to make sure he hasn't purchased bad drugs. A friend ties off his arm with a necktie to raise the vein. The needle is in his arm, and blood is backed into the tube to show register. When his friend lets go of the tie, the drug enters the bloodstream. Immediately, the effect is a flash or a rush so euphoric that some compare the sensation to a sexual orgasm. Life expectancy for a steady user from the first fix to the grave is extremely short. Excessive weight reduction is caused by loss of appetite and dehydration during speed runs, lasting from 3 to 12 days. A speed run is followed by a deep stupor, called crashing, which may last up to 2 days. With any attempt to stop using speed, the loss of euphoria induces a terrific psychological craving for more, but it can be alleviated by shooting smack, heroin. Here we see a girl in Jackson, Mississippi, supposed to be spending the night with a friend. Instead is shooting heroin, one of the most addictive drugs known. San Francisco, California. He is dead from an overdose of heroin. His buddies left him to die in a vacant lot. Drugs have been with us throughout our nation's history. Marijuana was available before the time of Christ and has been proven to cause both mental and physical damage. Why, suddenly, in ever-increasing numbers, is this generation turning to the use of narcotics? The first shocking realization of the so-called generation gap for many parents is the first look into their child's glazed eyes and dilated pupils. Many parents suddenly wonder where they went wrong. They must become aware that the generation gap is, in truth, a communications gap, and that it is not entirely family-created. Forces outside the home are communicating directly with young Americans in a language designed to be understood by young people and not understood by parents. These forces are taking advantage of the normal confusion among teenagers struggling for identity and purpose in life. lacking experience or the time for truly original thinking, they emulate others and parrot what they hear. And what they hear today is causing them to react as they do. Psychological acceptance is a necessary prerequisite before anyone will knowingly take a dangerous drug. The two primary influences creating such acceptance are, first, the youngster's need for peer acceptance. It's the chicken concept, the taunt, you're chicken if you don't. Second, the assurance that everybody's doing it. This assurance has been provided by the mass media. Articles on how young people by the thousands are turning to narcotics have been appearing regularly for several years in Look, Life, Time, Cosmopolitan, Newsweek, McCall's, and a string of others. Bad results may be mentioned, but the overall effect, unfortunately, has been to glamorize drug use and give assurance of widespread acceptance. Music is another strong influencing force. An innocent-sounding song, Along Came Mary, is really about Mary Jane, another name for marijuana. Other popular hits laced with connotations of marijuana are A Rainy Day Woman, Acapulco Gold, The Pusher Man, Voyage into Golden Screen, Mr. Farmer, Rolling Machine, to mention a few. This is the daily diet of children who screen each new hit for some hidden message of sex, drugs, or anti-establishment.
Don't bogart that joint, my friend.
The message is obvious in the new song you're hearing. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me. In other words, don't hog the marijuana. A joint is often smoked in a group and passed from person to person, as the song explains to young listeners. This new language, invented to move youngsters by music, leaves most parents unaware. Those who do know find it difficult to criticize because of the respectability given the music by the news media. This particular song, Don't Bogart Me, is reviewed by the Los Angeles Times as one of the funniest records of the year.
One pill makes you larger and one pill...
In the song White Rabbit by the Jefferson Airplane Group, vocalist Grace Slick tells children to feed their heads. In drug jargon, acid head and pothead are names for the LSD or marijuana user. So when the highly publicized Miss Slick says, feed your heads, the inference is, take drugs. We used to call people advocating the use of drugs dope pushers, but today they're featured on the cover of national magazines. Grace Slick, like many on the pop music scene, makes good copy for the national magazine, no matter what damage it does. You can see why from this interview she recently gave the girly magazine, Cavalier. We all use drugs. We condone the judicious use of drugs by everyone, she says. Kids are going to blow their minds somehow, and this is a better way to do it than racking their car against the wall. Let them groove, do their thing, ball on the grass in the open. To you over 30, that means have intercourse. She says, I dig watching people make love. Another of the avant-garde groups given national publicity by Life is the Mothers of Invention. Its leader is Frank Zappa. Life quotes him as saying, it would appear that society's major hang-ups can be cured by sexual freedom, drug freedom, and a hippie economic freedom from work. The 9 to 13 age group, predominantly female, represents the biggest record-buying market in the nation. So the next time you see a new album by the Beatles, it might be well for you to know that their hit, Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds, forms the acronym LSD. Blue Cheer, the title of a top singing group, is also the name for a form of LSD put out by Stanley Osley. Osley, by the way, has made $1 million selling narcotics to young people in California. Osley has also been the manager of the Grateful Dead group, whose music is designed, like that of Big Brother and the Holding Company, to be listened to under the influence of narcotics. To understand how such music creates the so-called generation gap, note the review of the Beatles' new record, Two Virgins, featuring John Lennon and his girlfriend on the cover. In summary, it claims that every town will have at least one outlet, so that 1,000,000 teenage Susies will be getting the record and taking it home to outraged parents who will not allow that record in this house. Win or lose, the result will be a great widening of the generation gap, for what magic can counteract the power of John Lennon's naked body? Another powerful force affecting young people is satire. Excellent examples can be found in psychedelic shops selling buttons and bumper strips and posters with all sorts of so-called humorous messages promoting the use of drugs. These shops also have all the equipment needed for using marijuana: roach holders, water pipes, and of course incense burners to hide the odor of marijuana from parents. Posters advertising the delights of marijuana and other drugs are big sellers. What youngster in the know could resist this groovy poster of Christ smoking pot through a hookah or water pipe? A good laugh-getter, and it costs only $2. Organized crime refers to youngsters using narcotics as ducks, because the kids gobble up anything put in front of them. This is borne out by people like Bill Graham, ex-manager of the Jefferson Airplane, who makes $35,000 per week selling psychedelic posters. With a high-powered promotion from all sides, it is small wonder that we find narcotics being used even in grammar schools. Statistics show an alarming increase in child drug use. In junior and senior high schools of Newport Beach, California, it was found that 80% of the teenagers had experimented with illegal drugs. Music, bumper strips, lapel buttons, and posters aren't the only media tying narcotics to satire and comedy. National magazines of all types are doing their share. The slick publication I caters to the money-spending youth market. Here it featured a cartoon strip about a duck that smokes marijuana and enjoys other forms of narcotics. Esquire magazine is untiring in its efforts to expose drug use. In this issue, it gives young people the inside story of a successful young dope peddler on a college campus, how he buys his narcotics, how much he sells them for. Then, enhancing the message that everybody's doing it, Esquire provides a price list of marijuana on every major college campus in the U.S. Narcotics cartoons are printed in numerous national magazines as Playboy, Esquire, I, Cavalier, and others. The narcotics language goes over the head of most adult readers, but has great impact on youth who decode every message. Playboy shows a couple in bed. The caption reads, "Oh, Shell, what a beautiful day. We'll take some Dexy," meaning amphetamines or dexedrine, "to get us going, smoke some pot, marijuana, to make breakfast taste better, and then we'll take an acid trip, LSD. I've been promising you, and tonight we'll sniff coke, cocaine, to help us make love, and then some Seconal, a downer, barbiturate, or yellow jacket, presumably to make them sleep." Motion pictures are subtly helping to shape favorable attitudes towards narcotics and sex, along with promoting anti-establishment sentiments. Television helps to keep kids preoccupied with similar ideas. Prime TV time has been devoted to Dr. Timothy Leary, the ex-Harvard professor, to explain the manifestations of religious experience under the influence of LSD. Dr. Leary enters millions of living rooms telling children to turn on, tune in, and drop out. Such constant enticement of youth is responsible for the thousands who need expert psychiatric help after bad trips on LSD. 4,100 youngsters within 18 months in Los Angeles County alone. Many college professors and high school teachers use their position of trust and influence to fight the establishment and promote the misuse of sex and drugs. They teach that there are no absolutes, no such things as right and wrong or black and white, only shades of gray. Without standards, it is understandable that so many young people become confused and search desperately for the true meaning of life. The student constantly is told that parents have placed too much pressure on this generation to achieve goals which are important only to the parents. We live in a drug-oriented society with a pill for every ill. So what's wrong with taking pills if they make you feel good? The question that must be addressed to parents is, who originated the in-group drug language and who, year in and year out, puts it to music. Did 20 million young people receive some kind of vision about drugs? Or are they merely reflecting what the mass media and some high school and college professors and publicized entertainers have taught them? It becomes easy to understand the willingness of so many young people to experiment with drugs. Some try it once or twice and never again. But for the majority, the psychological trauma is overwhelming and becomes, indeed, the first day in the rest of the youngster's life. The drug user automatically looks on society as his enemy, since he is on the other side of the law. Probably there is no greater force tending to solidify a group into a class than the use of narcotics. Waiting to capitalize on the unfortunates who turn to drugs is an active, organized group whose object is to create class hatred. For years, class hatred has been fomented between black and white, labor and management, rich and poor. Now it's one generation against another. Here's an example of how various forces are manipulating the newly formed class of young drug users. This poster appeared in Berkeley, California. It shows how marijuana and revolution joined together as one force, combining the Black Panther movement headed by Eldridge Cleaver and the notorious Hippie movement. The pipe in the corner is the symbol for marijuana crossed with the gun, symbol for revolution. To understand the people who promote this hatred, let's look at some of their publications. The May 23, 1968 edition of the San Francisco Express-Times shows the late Senator Kennedy in a casket with a caption, "Why waste your vote?" The article pointed out he would be done away with anyhow. Note, this appeared 2 weeks before Senator Kennedy's assassination. In every issue of the Express-Times is the column Altimeter. And these young revolutionaries and drug users are provided with the latest price list on drugs available in the San Francisco area and instructions for making bombs to be used in the coming revolution. Ready to cash in on the turmoil created and to promote it further are newspapers called the Underground Press Syndicate, which claim to reach 5 million young people every week. To these 5 million naive readers, they feed a steady stream of narcotic information, sexual perversion, and anti-establishment propaganda. They preach that youngsters should never trust anyone over 30. Max Shear, editor of the money-making Berkeley Barb, is over 50, but the kids haven't figured that out yet. One of the leading merchandisers of revolution and of narcotics, free love and class hatred, is over 30 Paul Krasner, an originator of the Hippie movement and publisher of The Realist in New York. His August 1968 issue devotes itself to the digger papers of the San Francisco hippie movement. Another realist write-up is a dramatic description of a hippie girl giving birth to her baby in a hippie communal kitchen, with the afterbirth passed around in a basin and consumed mau-mau fashion by her friends. They call this satire. Krasner demonstrates his anti-religious stand, again satirically, by having a prostitute dress up in a nun's habit. On one occasion, she opened his fly and fondled him in public to blow the minds of the straits. In the great flood of sacrilegious humor to which we are subjected, posters like this are considered funny, but only by those who are supposed to be dropping out of a sick society. Publications like Paul Krasner's also have impact on college newspapers and healthy-minded students. An example is the student-financed San Francisco State College paper, Open Process. It features such articles as Masturbators of the World Arise. This article, Free Love, advises you to have sexual relations with all your friends, male and female. The tone set by these papers is reflected even in so-called underground high school papers. Here are two, The Voice in Seattle and Insight from Los Angeles. Such papers are published by students in every major city, written for fellow high school readers, and filled with revolutionary, anti-religious, and narcotic stories, editorials, poems, and cartoons. The damage from these filthy sheets to the morals and well-being of the country would not be so widespread if it were not for the mass media taking up their cry. We wonder if the people at Look actually read these publications they write about so favorably. Publications that find humor in drinking the afterbirth of a baby, making Molotov cocktails, promoting homosexuality, preparing for revolution. Is this truly the voice of the future? Visit your library and look up any of the revolutionary movements given million-dollar publicity buildup in recent issues of magazines and newspapers. Jerry Rubin, for example, one of the militants appearing before the House Committee on Un-American Activities in Washington, taking part in Chicago Convention riots, or even in free speech or filthy speech demonstrations in Berkeley. His words ring a familiar note very close to those of other promoters of class hatred. In a pitch to young people, he says, capitalistic, money-making, bureaucratic, imperialistic-minded, boring, exploited, military world structures are crumbling. What is needed is a generation of people who are freaky, irrational, sexy, angry, irreligious, childish, and mad. People who say, to hell with your goals. People who lure you with music, pot, and LSD. You cannot disregard these revolutionaries. On June 23, 1967, on President Johnson's visit to Los Angeles, it took 3 armored helicopters and 1,300 armed police to keep 10,000 demonstrators from storming the Century Plaza Hotel. Note here, you didn't see it in the papers, leading the demonstrators was the communist, Peking-oriented Progressive Labor Party, headed by Jim Dan and Steve Cherkos. They're proudly flying the Viet Cong enemy flag. It's curious how publications such as Look magazine can give the Students for Democratic Society lofty recognition when the SDS publication New Left Notes has these novel educational methods for our entire society. Flushing bombs in toilets to destroy plumbing, using sharp tripod-shaped metal instruments to halt vehicles, firing Molotov cocktails from shotguns, jamming radio equipment, dropping thermite bombs down manholes to destroy communication systems. The publicity given SDS and other revolutionary groups by national publications has glamorized such organizations and aided in making youngsters the willing tools for purveyors of group hatred. Revolutionaries always have a symbol to identify the individual as a member of the movement. Today it is the peace symbol. It's seen everywhere around us. It identifies a struggle by groups who today envision another utopia. Youngsters are told, and many believe, that it is the vested interest in the status quo of their parents and society that stands in the way of utopia where all will live in peace. Certainly a beautiful thought. This has been the thought of people like Bertrand Russell, who introduced the peace symbol in England. He is credited with the phrase, better read than dead. This phrase typifies the philosophy of the Fabian Socialist Society, of which Russell was an early member. The Fabian Socialists foresee a one-world government which will be attained through gradualism, and to date they have been successful in dismembering the British Empire and nearly bankrupting what's left. The Fabian Socialists have been making headway also in the United States. Take, for example, the sandwich quarters and dimes you now carry. You can trace the cause of these back to the teachings of Lord John Maynard Keynes, a Fabian Socialist and father of our present U.S. economic system of deficit spending. Coincidental with the anti-religious movement in our country today, it is interesting to note that the so-called peace movement adopted the well-known symbol called the witches or crow's foot, familiar to Europeans as the Antichrist symbol. Another symbol worn by young people in America today is called the Ankh, an Egyptian symbol supposed to stand for life, signified by the male reproductive organ. Here the Ankh is used as the symbol of the Elysium Institute on its official publication. The Elysium Institute is dedicated to creating a sexual revolution. You can see by the cover list of articles the interest which the magazine promotes. Free love, according to Webster. The splendor of plural marriage. Bisexuality, the way of the future. Elysium Institute, publishers of Ankh and other nudist magazines, also provides its readers with a referral directory of organizations having similar goals. Prominent on this list is SECUS, Sex Education and Information Council of the U.S. SECUS is working with the National Education Association to introduce sex education to all children from kindergarten through high school. The lessons for the very tiny ones are already part of the curricula in many schools. First, children are taught how dogs, cats, and horses have seeds planted in them. Then they learn that human beings are like other animals. And next they learn how Mommy and Daddy do it, by lying down facing each other as shown. This type of education in the schools for 5-year-olds has brought protest from aroused parents. And incredibly, those parents concerned with the Sekus approach to teaching their children are portrayed as reactionaries who think sex education is some kind of communist plot. Parents frantically search for an answer and grasp at any plausible solution. However, they should beware when the same influences that created the problem start supplying the answer. The answer being promoted this time is called sensitivity training. Sensitivity training, sometimes called behavioral science, is not new. It was used in Germany to control the minds of the fanatic Nazi youth. It was used in Russia under the name of psychopolitics and was a successful force in subduing the masses into submitting to rule by a few. The Chinese used it on our soldiers in the Korean War, only then it was called brainwashing. It was so successful that for the first time in American history, many of our soldiers didn't even try to escape from their captors. Now the same technique is being introduced in high schools and colleges across the nation as the antidote for the increase in drug abuse. To see how this kind of training can influence and control our young people, let's look at an article from Time magazine that gave national stature to the revolutionaries in the graduating class of 1968, terming them as possibly the most creative ferment ever to disturb college campuses. One student example given is Brian McGuire, who, after attending a sensitivity training course at California's Esalen Institute, announced to his Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society that his academic achievement hadn't been worth it. If this is the effect on a disciplined, highly educated mind, imagine the impact on teenagers already confused enough to turn to drugs. Parents must understand that organizations like the Esalen Institute, Sekus for Sex Education, Timothy Leary's Castilian Foundation, and many others receive their major financing from tax-free foundations. A fact you might contemplate when you look at your next pay voucher. You should realize that the music your children listen to is not all harmless. Some is designed to demoralize American youth, even though they cannot be made to believe it. It's all spelled out for you in the White Panther Manifesto. With our music and our economic changes, we plunder the unsuspecting straight world for money and the means to carry out our program. You don't need to get rid of all the honkies. You just rob them of their replacements and let them atrophy and die out, with its heirs cheering triumphantly all around. We don't have guns yet, not all of us, because we have more powerful direct weapons. Direct access to millions of teenagers is one of our most potent weapons, and their belief in us is another. But we will use guns if we have to. If you find all of this disgusting, congratulate yourself. You're in the majority. But what can you do to solve the problem? People everywhere are concerned and frustrated, and many see the need for concentrated, concerted action. Add your strength to the growing movement to restore decency and reinforce basic moral standards. Join a local group, or if none exist, help form one. The stakes in this battle are extremely high. Simply stated, the stakes are the minds, emotions, bodies, and even the souls of your children. These children are your responsibility, and the attacks on them are unrelenting. Here is just one example of why we must all involve ourselves. This is an art exhibit at California State College, Long Beach. Over 27,000 students and 1,000 professors. The exhibit was defended by the official student paper and many of the faculty members as being in good taste. They said people who see anything wrong with this have to be sick in their own minds. The incredible fact is that some of the horribly sick minds behind the promotion of pornography, obscenity, and drugs are the very same ones now designing the sex education courses for our children in the schools. Pornography, obscenity, and drugs, now sex education for our children. No matter how you look at the situation, it is obvious that the things we are seeing are not all happening by accident. In the final analysis, the choice is up to you. If you are a young person, you must resist these attacks in order to preserve your own mental and physical well-being and maintain your personal integrity. If you are a parent, you must provide the direction and supervision for your own family. Join the movement to restore decency now, before the needle is in your child's arm.